I thought I knew my wife. 18 years of marriage, and I still got played like a complete idiot. My name is Ray Kowalski. I'm 42 years old, and I run a pest control company out of suburban Columbus, Ohio. Not exactly a glamorous career, but it pays the mortgage, keeps the lights on, and puts food on the table for my family. My wife Donna works as a program coordinator at a downtown nonprofit. She's always been passionate about the work: fundraisers, youth outreach, grant applications. I respected that about her. Still do, in some twisted way. We have a son named Garrett. He's 10, he's on the autism spectrum, and he knows more about American railroad history than most professors. Kid can tell you the horsepower rating of a 1950s diesel locomotive before he can tell you what he wants for breakfast. He's my whole world. That Friday started completely normal. I was wrapping up a termite job at a client's place on the east side, sweating through my shirt in her garage, when Donna called around 5:30. "Hey, babe." Her voice had this brightness to it that I noticed, but didn't think much about at the time. "So a few of the girls from work want to get together tonight. Nothing major. Just come over here, order some food, maybe have some wine. Very low-key." I pulled off my gloves and leaned against the truck. "How many people are we talking?" "Oh, just a handful. Carol from development, maybe Pam and her husband. You know how it goes, super casual." "Okay," I said. "That's fine. Actually," she paused and I could hear her choosing her words. "You know how Garrett gets when there are strangers around. All that noise and people he doesn't know. Why don't you take him over to your brother's for the night? Give him a calm evening, give yourself a break. You've been working so hard lately." I leaned against the truck door. "It's pretty last minute to drop him on Eddie." "I already called Eddie. He said he'd love it. Apparently he just picked up some new model train kit and wants to show Garrett." I stood there for a second. Something felt slightly off about how smoothly she'd arranged all of this, but I couldn't put my finger on why. Donna was right that Garrett didn't love having unfamiliar people in the house, especially on a Friday when his routine was already winding down, and trains were basically Garrett's love language. "All right," I said. "I'll swing home, grab him, and head over." "You're the best, Ray. Seriously, love you." "Love you too." I hung up and sat there for a minute with the phone in my hand. That nagging feeling didn't go away. It just sat there in the back of my head like a low-grade hum. But I'd been married to this woman for 18 years. You build up trust over 18 years. You learn to give people the benefit of the doubt. I wish I hadn't been so damn reasonable about it. I picked up Garrett around 6, and we drove over to Eddie's place. My brother had the train kit laid out on his workbench before we even got through the door. A detailed replica of a Union Pacific diesel that Garrett zeroed in on like a missile. Watching my kid crouch over that workbench with his eyes wide and his hands moving carefully over every detail, I felt genuinely good about the evening. This was exactly what he needed. "Thanks for doing this on short notice," I told Eddie, while Garrett was already deep in conversation with him about axle configurations. Eddie waved me off. "Are you kidding? This kid is better company than most adults I know." He grinned. "Go have a beer somewhere. Relax. We'll be fine." The plan was to head over to Cunningham's bar, catch the game, maybe meet up with a couple of guys from my softball league. Normal Friday night stuff. But as I drove away from Eddie's neighborhood, that hum in the back of my head got louder. I tried calling my buddy Phil. Straight to voicemail. Tried Dave. Same thing. So there I was, free evening, nowhere to be, and this low-grade unease that I couldn't shake no matter how hard I tried. Then I remembered my good Milwaukee drill. I'd left it in the garage that morning, and I needed it for a job out in Westerville first thing Saturday. It was 15 minutes away. I'd just swing by, grab it, maybe pop my head in and say hi to Donna's friends for 2 minutes, be the supportive husband, and head out. Simple. I turned onto our street and stopped being able to explain away the feeling. There were cars everywhere. Both sides of the street, packed tight, stretching half a block in each direction. I counted at least 10 vehicles I didn't recognize before I stopped counting. I had to park 3 houses down from my own driveway. I sat in the truck for a moment just staring. A few girls from work, Carol from development, Pam and her husband. I got out and started walking toward the house. The music hit me before I even reached the front walk. Not the soft background stuff Donna usually put on for dinner parties, but something with a real thumping bass line you could feel through the soles of your shoes on the sidewalk. The front windows were glowing warm and orange, and I could see shadows moving around inside. A lot of shadows. What in the hell? I said quietly to no one. I had my key out. Part of me thought about knocking, giving Donna a heads up, being polite about it. Then I thought, this is my house. I pay the mortgage on this house. I don't knock at my own front door. I turned the key and walked in. The smell hit me first. Alcohol and some kind of expensive cologne that definitely did not belong to anyone I knew. Then the noise, the crowd, the whole scene. My living room was packed with people I had never seen before in my life. Not a single face I recognized. These weren't nonprofit workers in their 40s having a quiet wine night. Half these people looked like they'd just come from a club downtown. Younger guys in fitted shirts that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. Women in dresses that weren't designed for casual Friday gatherings. Someone had rearranged the furniture. Someone had set up a little bar situation on my kitchen counter, using bottles that I definitely had not purchased. I stood in my own doorway feeling like I'd walked into the wrong house. And then I saw Donna. She was over by the kitchen island, and she wasn't alone. Some guy was standing next to her, leaning against the counter with the kind of relaxed confidence that told me he'd been there a while and felt perfectly comfortable. Mid-30s, I guessed. Lean, well-dressed, with a kind of easy smile that probably worked very well on women who weren't paying close enough attention. His hand was resting on the small of my wife's back, not hovering, resting, like it belonged there. But what really got me, and what really dug in deep, was Donna's face. She was laughing at something he'd said, that real laugh, the full one, the one that used to be directed at me, and her body was turned toward him, her shoulder angled in, her hand touching his arm when she talked. She was looking up at him like he was the most interesting person in the room. I hadn't seen that expression in a long time. I moved through the crowd. Years of squeezing through tight crawl spaces and cluttered garages will teach you how to navigate a packed room without making a scene. People shifted without really noticing me. I got close enough to hear them talking. "You did not say that to him," Donna was saying, laughing and swatting his chest. Hand to God. His voice was smooth, unhurried. The voice of a man who never felt out of place anywhere. Life is genuinely too short to spend it pretending you're fine with things you're not fine with. He looked at her with this particular kind of look. Sometimes you just have to reach out and take what you actually want. The way he said it, the way she received it. I felt my jaw tighten. Donna. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It cut right through their conversation like I'd flipped a switch. They both turned, and I watched the color leave my wife's face in real time. For just a second, maybe half a second, she looked genuinely frightened. Then she pulled up that smile, that bright, performative smile that I'd learned over the years, meant she was managing a situation. "Ray." Her voice was too cheerful by about 40%. "You're back early. I thought you were spending the evening with Garrett and Eddie. Change of plans?" I looked at her for a moment, then shifted my eyes to the guy standing next to her, with his hand still hovering near her back. "Who's this?" He didn't hesitate, extended his hand with a firm, practiced grip and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Clint Farrow. I work with Donna over at the foundation. She's talked about you." "Funny," I said, shaking his hand once and letting go. "She's never mentioned you." I looked back at Donna. I thought this was supposed to be a small thing. Few people from work. "You know how it goes." She was fidgeting with her wine glass, turning it in her fingers. "Word got out, people brought friends, it just kind of grew," I said. "All right. Into what exactly?" I looked around the room slowly, then back at her. Because this doesn't look like Carol from Development and Pam's husband having some wine on a Friday night. Clint actually laughed. Not a nervous laugh, an amused one, like my irritation was mildly entertaining to him. "Hey, no harm in people having a good time, right? It's Friday." I turned my full attention to him. I've been dealing with difficult people my entire working life. Homeowners who are convinced I'm ripping them off, building inspectors who make everything harder than it needs to be, customers who get aggressive when they don't like what I have to tell them. I know how to read a room, and I know how to read a person. And what I was reading from Clint Farrow was a man who was very used to getting what he wanted and very unused to anyone getting in his way. "You seem pretty comfortable in my house," I said. Level voice, steady. "How long have you and my wife been working together?" Something shifted in his expression. Just a flicker, quick enough that you'd miss it if you weren't looking for it. But I was looking. "We collaborate on a few programs," he said. "The youth outreach stuff mostly. Donna's great at what she does. Really dedicated." The way he said dedicated. "I'm sure she is." I took one step closer. Not aggressive. Just close enough to change the geometry of the conversation. "Tell me something, Clint. Do all your professional collaborations involve putting your hand on your colleague's back at her husband's house?" "Ray, stop!" Donna's voice went sharp. "You're being paranoid. Clint is a coworker, that's all." "That's all," I repeated. "Yes. So the hand on your back is just, what, office culture?" "You're embarrassing yourself," she said. And her voice had this edge to it now, this defensive heat that I recognized. It was the voice she used when she knew she was wrong but wasn't ready to admit it. Am I? It wasn't a question. The party noise had dropped noticeably around us. People nearby had stopped pretending not to listen. I could feel the attention shifting our way, conversations going quiet, heads turning. Fine. Let them watch. "Look," Clint said, his tone sliding from smooth to something a little harder underneath. "I think you're reading into something that isn't there." "You might be right," I said pleasantly. "I've been wrong before." I looked at him. But in my experience, when a man is standing in another man's kitchen with his hand on that man's wife, and she's laughing like that, and neither one of them looks particularly surprised to get caught, well, that's usually not nothing. His jaw tightened. "I think you should calm down." I am calm. And I was. That was the thing. I was completely calm in the way you get calm when something finally makes sense after months of not making sense. I'm the calmest person in this room right now. What I'm not is stupid. "Ray," Donna started. "How long?" I asked her directly. "Nothing is going on." "How long, Donna?" She looked away. Her hand moved toward Clint's arm. Not quite touching, but almost this reflexive motion she caught herself making and stopped. But I saw it. That was the moment. That small, aborted gesture. That told me everything. "Okay," I said quietly. I pulled out my phone. "Who are you calling?" Clint asked. "Non-emergency police line," I said. "To report a trespasser who doesn't seem to understand that this is a private residence and he's not welcome in it." The effect was immediate. Clint's composed expression cracked at the edges. Several people near the kitchen doorway started drifting toward the front of the house without being asked. Nobody wants to be around when a domestic situation gets official. Ray put the phone down. Donna stepped toward me. "Please, let's just talk." "Talk?" I looked at her. "Like you talked to me on the phone tonight? Like you told me it was just Carol and Pam? That kind of talk? That's not fair." "No," I agreed. "It really isn't." Clint straightened up and held his hands out in what was probably supposed to be a reasonable, de-escalating gesture. "Look, man, there's no need for this. I'll go. No problem." "Yeah, you will." I kept the phone in my hand. "But first, I want to understand something. How long has this been your thing? Finding women at work, making them feel special, seeing how far it goes? Is that the move? That's not, because I've got to tell you, Clint, from the outside looking in, you seem like a guy who's very good at knowing exactly what he's doing." I let that sit for a second. "And I want you to hear me clearly when I tell you that if you call my wife, text my wife, or find reasons to be alone with my wife at work, I'm going to make some phone calls to some people who sit on your foundation's board of directors. I know a few of them personally. You'd be surprised how small this city actually is." He stared at me. "Professional boundaries," I said. "Look it up." There was a long pause. Then Clint turned to Donna, and his voice dropped. "I'll reach out later." "No," I said. "You won't." He looked at me one more time, that particular look of a man recalculating, and then he pushed through the remaining guests and walked out my front door. A good chunk of the party followed him without needing to be asked. Within 10 minutes, my house had gone from a packed Friday night event to just me and Donna standing in a kitchen full of empty glasses and used napkins and the wreckage of whatever this marriage actually was. The silence after everyone left was enormous. We need to talk, Donna said. Her voice was quiet now. All the brightness and performance had drained out of it. Yeah, I said. We do. She moved to the kitchen table and sat down. I stayed standing, leaning against the counter with my arms crossed. Not angry. Past angry, actually. Somewhere on the other side of it, in this flat, clear place where everything looks very simple. Mike, she started, then caught herself. Ray, I know what this looked like. Tell me how long. She closed her eyes. 6 months. 6 months. I stood there and let that number settle into me. 6 months of coming home to this house, kissing her hello, asking how her day went, talking about Garrett's therapy appointments and school stuff and weekend plans. 6 months of lying next to her at night and not knowing. 6 months of her looking me in the eye. 6 months, I said. I tried to end it. Her voice was starting to get that defensive edge again. I tried more than once. But Ray, our marriage, when is the last time you actually looked at me? When is the last time I felt like I mattered to you as a person and not just as a co-parent and a bill splitter? I stared at her. You're going to do that. I'm not blaming you. You are literally doing that right now. I'm saying things were broken between us before any of this happened. She pressed on. We've been running on fumes for years. We're like two people sharing a house and a kid and a bank account. There's nothing between us anymore. No spark, no intimacy, nothing real. So you went and found something real with Clint Farrow. She lifted her chin slightly. He makes me feel like a person again. Like I'm interesting and attractive and worth paying attention to. I walked over to the kitchen table where she kept her laptop and opened it. She watched me with this wary, uncertain expression. What are you doing? She asked. Looking at our finances. I pulled up our bank accounts and turned the screen toward her. Since you've been busy feeling interesting and attractive, I want to make sure we're both clear on what this life actually costs. I pointed at the screen. Mortgage, $2,700 a month. That comes from my business. Garrett's therapy sessions, you know the ones he needs 3 times a week, those run about $600 a week, and insurance covers less than half. His dietary stuff, the specialized programs, the occupational therapy equipment. I clicked through to another screen. Both car payments, because your car is newer and more reliable for getting him to his appointments, which I agreed to because it made sense. Utilities, internet, the upgraded package we pay extra for because Garrett needs the bandwidth for his educational software. Donna was looking at the table. I'm not trying to be cruel, I said. I'm being accurate. Your salary covers roughly 25% of our monthly expenses on a good month. The rest comes from me driving around this city dealing with rodents and termites and whatever else people call me for. That's what's been funding the life that gave you the time and energy to feel alive with Clint Farrow. I know you work hard. I'm not asking for credit. I closed the laptop. I'm asking you to understand what you're proposing to blow up. This isn't just about your feelings and my feelings. This is Garrett's stability. This is the structure he depends on. You used him tonight, Donna. You knew I'd take him to Eddie's if you told me the noise would be too much for him. You used our son's condition to clear the house so you could have your boyfriend over. Don't say it like that. How should I say it? She didn't answer. How long have you wanted a divorce? I asked. She looked up sharply. I don't want a divorce. No, I want to fix this. I want to go to counseling. I want to actually work on us. Where was that 6 months ago? I said. Where was the counseling conversation 6 months ago, before you decided to handle it by finding someone else? Because that option was available to you. You could have come to me and said, Ray, I feel disconnected. I feel like we're just going through the motions. I need us to actually deal with this. I would have listened. I'm not a perfect man, but I'm not someone who refuses to hear his wife. I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. You didn't do that. You made a different choice. And now we're here. So that's it. Her voice cracked. You're just done. I'm going to pack a bag and stay at Eddie's tonight. Tomorrow I'll find a lawyer, someone who handles custody arrangements for kids with special needs. I headed for the stairs. We'll figure out a schedule for Garrett that keeps his routine as stable as possible. That's the priority. Mike, Ray, please don't do this. She stood up. I ended it with Clint. Tonight, I'm choosing my family. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and looked back at her. Donna, I said, and my voice came out tired more than anything else. You don't end an affair the night your husband catches you and call that choosing your family. That's just damage control. I turned back toward the stairs. I'll call you tomorrow. I heard her say my name one more time as I went up, but I kept moving. Eddie opened the door at 10:30 and took one look at me, the overnight bag, the expression on my face, and didn't ask a single question. He just stepped aside, handed me a beer from the fridge, and said the couch was mine. I lay there most of the night looking at the ceiling while the house was quiet. Around 2 in the morning, I could hear the faint sound of Garrett's white noise machine from down the hall, that steady hum he needs to sleep. I focused on that sound and tried to let everything else go quiet. Donna started texting around 6. First the apologies, then the explanations, then the promises, then, when those didn't get a response, the threats. She'd fight me on everything. She'd get her own lawyer. She'd make this difficult. I read the first 3 messages and deleted the rest. Garrett was up by 7, fully rested, completely unaware, and immediately wanted to show me the progress he and Eddie had made on the train layout. He'd added a whole new switching system overnight and wanted to walk me through the logic of it. I sat on the floor of Eddie's hobby room and let him explain it to me, and I listened to every word. "Dad," he said at one point, looking up from the tracks, with that direct, unfiltered attention he has, "you seem like something's wrong." "I've got some grown-up stuff to work through," I told him. "Nothing you need to worry about." He considered this. "Is it about Mom? She was acting different yesterday when she was getting ready." Even Garrett had picked up on it. Kids on the spectrum sometimes miss the subtle social signals that other kids catch automatically. But they notice changes in routine and behavior with this sharp, clear precision that can catch you off guard. "Yeah, it's about Mom," I said. "But here's what I need you to know, and I need you to really hear this. Whatever happens between your mom and me, we both love you. That part doesn't change. That part is not up for discussion." He nodded slowly, filed that away, and went back to explaining the switching system. Eddie came in with coffee around 9 and sat down on the floor next to me. We watched Garrett run a locomotive through the new configuration 3 times in a row. "Donna's been having an affair," I said, "in 6 months. I caught them last night." Eddie was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" "Divorce? I want primary custody of Garrett, or as close to it as I can get. She can have whatever she wants out of the house. I just want Garrett to have stability. You need a lawyer who knows special needs custody." "That's exactly what I need. My buddy Dennis went through something similar a few years back. His ex tried to move their daughter out of state. Kid has sensory processing issues, the whole thing. His lawyer was incredible. Fought like hell and kept everything in state. I'll get you her number." We sat there for a while without talking, just drinking coffee and watching Garrett run his trains, and it was the most peaceful I'd felt in months. Maybe longer. My phone lit up with Donna's name. I looked at it for a second, then answered. "What?" "Ray, please come home. I told Clint it's over. I mean it this time. I'm choosing you and Garrett. I'm choosing our family. Donna, please just come home and talk to me. I'll be by later to pick up some more of my things. Garrett's going to stay here for now." I paused. "I'll have my lawyer reach out to your lawyer once you've got one." I hung up and turned the phone face down on the carpet. 6 months later, I was sitting in my apartment. Smaller than the house, obviously, but it was clean and it was mine, and it was quiet in a way the house hadn't been in a long time. Garrett's room was set up exactly the way he liked it. Train collection organized by era along the windowsill, books sorted by subject on the shelves, the specific blue bedspread he'd picked out himself. He spent weekdays with Donna and weekends with me, and that schedule had turned out to be genuinely good for him. Clear, predictable, consistent, exactly what he needs. The divorce had been ugly in patches, but faster than I expected. Donna came in swinging at first. Wanted the house, wanted primary custody, floated the idea of spousal support, tried to frame me as an emotionally absent workaholic who'd driven her into the arms of another man. Her lawyer was aggressive. Mine was better. Several people who'd been at that party were willing to talk about what they'd witnessed, which made certain arguments difficult to sustain. In the end, she took half the assets, we split custody, and the lawyers got paid. Clint Farrow, as it turned out, was gone from the picture about 8 weeks into the divorce proceedings. Apparently, the reality of being with a woman navigating a contested divorce while co-parenting a special needs child was considerably less thrilling than the sneaking around version had been. Shocking development. Nobody saw that coming. My business was doing well. Better than well, actually. I'd brought on 2 part-time guys to help with the workload, which meant I could take on more contracts without burning myself out, which meant Garrett's therapy sessions were covered without stress, and I'd started putting money back into his college fund. On a Saturday afternoon in October, Garrett called me into his room to show me the completed model he'd been working on for 3 weeks. A Union Pacific big boy locomotive, every detail perfect, painted and labeled and mounted on a little display base he'd made himself. "That's beautiful, bud," I said, and I meant it completely. "Can we add it to the layout?" "Absolutely." We spent the rest of the afternoon running trains, eating pizza straight from the box, and talking about whether diesel or steam locomotives were more historically significant, which is a debate Garrett has very strong opinions about. It was easy and warm and exactly what Saturday afternoon is supposed to feel like. Around 5, I got a text from Donna asking if she could pick Garrett up an hour early. Some family thing on her side she wanted to bring him to. I checked with Garrett, who was fine with it, and started packing up his overnight bag. When she pulled into the parking lot and came up to the apartment door, she looked different than she had 6 months ago. The energy she'd had during that whole period, that lit-up, charged quality, was gone. She looked tired. Older, maybe? More like herself, actually. The version of herself I'd married, except with something worn down in the eyes. "How's he doing?" she asked, watching Garrett collect his train magazines from the coffee table. "Really well. He's been talking about trying out for the Science Olympiad team at school next year." "That's wonderful." She paused. There was something she wanted to say. I could see her deciding whether to say it. "Ray, Donna, I want you to know that I understand what I did, and I understand what I threw away." Her voice was careful, controlled. "I know that doesn't fix anything." "No," I said, it doesn't. "I know." She nodded once, looked at Garrett, and her expression softened completely. "Ready, baby?" "1 minute," Garrett said, still organizing his magazines by publication date. I stepped back from the doorway and let them have their moment. When they left, Garrett giving me a quick, firm hug and Donna giving me a nod that was polite and sad and appropriate, I closed the door and stood in my quiet apartment. No tension, no performance, no low-grade anxiety about what mood someone was in or what was being hidden or what conversation I was going to have to navigate tonight. Just the sound of my refrigerator humming and the last of the afternoon light coming through the window. I went and sat on the couch and felt something I hadn't felt in longer than I could honestly remember. Just quiet, just peace, just mine.